What is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and I am here with another video. Today we are taking a look at my one of my much-awaited picks of this year for best figure, and that's the Figuarts Ryu from quote-unquote Street Fighter V. And I'm going to get into a little bit more about that, but I have so much to say about this figure. And soon after this, I'll have a lot to say about the Storm Collectibles Bison. But this figure does everything that you would expect from a figure, everything you would want for a figure from a fighting game franchise that's as well known as Street Fighter and has been around for so long. It does everything you would want. It pays attention to the franchise and pays attention to the lore, pays attention to the design aesthetics especially well, and it does something that's kind of bold for a figure that actually has the specific game that it's supposed to be representing on it. And I'm going to get into that later on because, you know, if you've been around the block a few times, you know me and you know how I feel about aesthetics when it comes to art in games. So anyway, you know the drill. Grab something to drink, something to eat, sit down, get comfortable, and we are going to take a nice long look at this figure and almost everything related to Ryu and why Figuarts knocked this shit way the fuck out of the park. So let's go. The sculpt is undeniably Ryu. There's nothing that can be said, there's no complaining, there's no arguing. It's Ryu. It is the most iconic version of Ryu. A lot of people have issues with this, and I'm going to go through and explain this in detail as we get further into this sculpt section. This will probably be the longest sculpt and paint section I've ever done, but these are the details and features that when people think Ryu, people who have been playing Street Fighter for longer than Street Fighter 4 and 5 and, you know, Tekken Cross Street Fighter have been around. The OGs, the people who really been fans of Street Fighter in every medium outside of just the games, this is what we think of when we hear the name Ryu. Everything is here. They left out a detail. It's an accessory that, you know, some people, so far only one company really has, you know, knocked that out of the park and included it, but overall, all the details are here, down to the gloves, down to the freaking Furen Kazan on his belt. Everything is there. So you can't really complain about, you know, which version of this is. He's not wearing a white headband, but then have the, you know, physique from Street Fighter 3. It's Ryu, the most recognizable version of the character. And just like with every other version of any SH Figuarts figure, I can make him do anything I want him to do. Anything Ryu does, this cat can do. And he doesn't just do it and it's okay, it's kind of like an idea behind it, he does it. And it's beautiful. It's why I've been collecting Figuarts for so long. And the Chun-Li is also in the same vein. And now there have been a lot of reviews out where people have kind of passive-aggressively dogged these figures simply because they did not adhere to the look found in Street Fighter 4 and 5, but more so 5 because it says 5 on the box. There's some ups and downs to this, but there's more ups, in my opinion, if you are looking for a figure that is the proper representation of these characters, you know? I think that it's almost one of those things that goes without saying that fans, hardcore fans, you know, of the property outside of the game, they recognize when the figure is faithfully reproduced in the best version of, you know? Chun-Li, that's an example of Chun-Li, the way you think of, what you think of when you hear her name. From head to toe. Ryu, same deal. This is what you think of. And when you see him in situations, this is what you think of. If you were to pop in the anime today, this is what you would get, you know what I mean? If you were to pop in, you know, any of the Versus games, this is what you get. He doesn't look out of place. The red is vibrant. His skin tone, his tan is vibrant. The gi, it's white, but it looks like it's been through several wash cycles. And that's the way it's supposed to be. He is supposed to look like a vagabond, fighter, and that's exactly what he is. But the elephant in the room is simple. Why does Ryu look different from the Ono produced versions of the games? This is Street Fighter 4. You distinctly notice, or you notice a distinct difference immediately when you look at this figure. It looks like someone just fed him butter all day long, and bricks and mortar and creatine. And NECA did a good job recreating that in figure form. They easily followed all the cues, the enormous feet, the enormous hands. They even actually pared down the hands to be proportioned to the body so that things fit and the hands weren't too heavy for the arms. They even went the extra mile with some of the articulation, kind of in some ways trumping Soda with more articulation, but it wasn't well engineered articulation because the hard but malleable plastic for the gi actually fought the added articulation. I'm gonna get into that more. But when you think Ryu, all of our collective, if you're older than like 16 or 17, maybe 18 or something, or you're one of those people who's not a flavor of the month Street Fighter fan, this is what you remember as the beginning of your first introduction to Ryu. This is what he looks like as drawn by Akiman himself, one of the lead artists on the Street Fighter project. You see his musculature. You see even back then he had brown hair, something that carried over into the Alpha series. But the white gi, the ripped sleeves, the stature, the red gloves, everything's here. This is Ryu as he's supposed to be. Here's an even more, I want to say Bengus had something to do with this design. This looks like Bengus's art, and I always forget to look this up, but this is Bengus, I'm pretty sure. This is what you think of. This is why I put it in my intro. This is another thing that this is where my mind goes, because I was heavy into Street Fighter once Super and Super Turbo popped up. And this design even carried over into like SNK versus Capcom. This is Shinkiro's artwork here. You can clearly see everything that was in the Street Fighter 2 and the Super Street Fighter stuff is right here. Musculature and everything. Then into the versus SNK versus Capcom games. This is Kino Nishimura's artwork. Love her style, love her artwork, but did you notice a slight change? It's the black hair. Because one thing they started adding into the canon is that older Ryu's hair is black and it's spiky and it's not all Charlie Sheened up like it was back in the day. Late as Aikino doing Street Fighter 3, this is from Third Strike. The artwork was reflecting more Japanese, more Asian features. I mean, his face still looks kind of white, but that's a lot of anime characters, but the black hair, the vibrant red and the white. This is from Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And while this is not a terrible model, because this is not someone's hand-drawn stuff, the less we talk about this, the better. Because this is where their art was kind of going, in the wrong direction. This is from Tatsunoko versus Capcom. I like the style. It's very simplified because that's what they were going for. But you see black hair, red gloves, red headband, Furen Kazan on his belt. It's the way Ryu looks. Even Shinkiro's artwork for Capcom Fighting Jam, which came way before Tatsunoko versus Capcom. You can still see it's all here. He even combined the old Charlie Sheen hair. And then we come to Smash Brothers. I don't remember which one. It's whatever the last one is, or one of the last ones. I don't play Smash Brothers, and I don't really care about it. But I had to include it because this model is on point. And it looks very much like the figure that I'm reviewing today. So my question, though, is how did we get from this to this? Akiman also drew that. All these things, keep that in mind as we go and we look through these figures. These are all the Ryu figures that I own. And I own quite a few because Ryu is one of my favorite characters. I was huge into the Soda Street Fighter line. I think I have every figure with the exception of the Revolution stuff. That stuff came and I was just kind of uninterested because it was like 3 of the figures off the bat were whatchamacallit, reuses of Akuma's body. I even had the X-Men versus Street Fighter figures from Toy Biz, but they, at the time, they were all you could get back then, because my brother and I were huge into X-Men versus Street Fighter. I'm still undefeated. No, I have 1 loss, not undefeated. I have 1 loss, and it was a strange one too. The time over, and it was all these weird circumstances. Anyway, X-Men versus Street Fighter from Toy Biz. They were good for the time. Toy Biz was upping their game. This is all pre-Marvel Legends, and they look like a product of the time. I had fun with them. I had a lot of these figures, man. I had my only Rogue figure until this recent Rogue was from this line. So, it's got its merits, but woo-wee. Anyway, we're going to start with the High Dream Ryu. This is from, I think, their SNK versus Capcom series. It came out around 2003, 2004. I want to say it was 2004. I know they dropped a little bit before the Soda Street Fighter figures. And next up is the NECA Ryu figure, which, oh man, when did that came out? When Street Fighter 4 dropped. I know these were in stores around that time. That was 2009. And these, like I said earlier, they did a good job capturing the Street Fighter 4 aesthetic. But the High Dream figure and the NECA Ryu were, for a while, the biggest examples of the figure, next to the Play Arts Kai, which I don't mess with those because I can't stand their joints. But a lot of people complain about the Figuarts figure not looking like Ryu. It looks like Ryu. Bushy eyebrows, long mouth, very straight nose bridge, and they all have it in common. He just doesn't look as roided up as the Street Fighter 4 version. Now, if you want to see a huge difference, look at him, essentially the alpha version versus the Street Fighter 3 and so many other version, incarnation. But here's the thing everyone wants to know and should be asking. Can he Hadouken, though? Now, the Hadouken looks like this. Despite what you've seen from so many other people, this is what it's supposed to look like. It's not supposed to be some shit where, his hands are going all over the place. It's not supposed to be a Hao Soko Ken from King of Fighters. And pay close attention, because this is going to come back up. Hadouken. Not what I just showed you before. That is a Hao Soko Ken. This is a Hadouken. This is the wave motion fireball. This is exactly, or wave motion punch. This is what we saw all those years ago, and it involves palms being really close together, okay? The Figuarts Ryu can do this easily. Super easily. Do you see it? I bet you if I even spent a little bit more time, I could get it even closer. But look at all these versions. Look at that. That's Smash Brothers, and that looks better than Street Fighter 4. So, yeah, pay attention to that. Now, what other figures can do this? These are the Soda Ryus. Evil Ryu and regular Ryu. That is the start up, the charge up pose, and here is the firing pose. It looks like it from far away, right? From sideways. Nah, can't do it. That's camera tricks. You see that a lot online. A lot of people, trying to trick you. The High Dream Ryu from SNK vs. Capcom 2. He's charging up really well. That looks cool. Everything's in the right place. And look, it's low, but no, it's not quite a fireball. That looks more like a Shoko Ken. It's because he doesn't have butterfly joints and no clearance to actually get closer. But he looks really cool, though. I'm not going to diss him. He looks good. The NECA version. Now, surely the NECA version could do this. I mean, he's got butterfly joints. He's got double-jointed elbows. He better be able to go do this shit. It's got to be simple for him. I mean, He couldn't possibly not be able to do it. Look, he's shooting a fireball. Kind of wide. He's close, but still no cigar. And that's even with the butterfly joint. You see what I'm talking about? That's supposed to give you like pectoral movement so that you can get your arms over each other and closer to each other. The gi resists. Figuarts. Can the Figuarts do it? I believe you guys already know, especially since their motto is to successfully pursue character expression through humanoid action. That means the figure moves the way that humans do, which means their anatomy works like human anatomy, not like Marvel Legends, like human anatomy. I cringe at how many videos I saw where people were nitpicking the way that the joints work because they're so different from your standard, Marvel Legends fare and shit like that. I mean, look at how his arms actually can move, and they can go further, closer to his chest. You can almost get one over the top of the other. Not like this, where you have to use a camera trick. And then you still end up with a big gap between the hands. It's supposed to be almost palm to palm. It used to be palm to palm, but it needs to be close. It's not a camera trick. It needs to be able to actually do this. That's the whole point. And I don't know how many videos I watched where people weren't able to do it with their figure. They were saying the Storm one was better, and it couldn't do that simple thing. And I mean, that's the thing about Figuarts, is that they are known for creating figures that can recreate things they do either in video games, movies, TV shows, anime, whatever. And that's the whole point. You want a figure that's a three-dimensional representation of that character right in your hand. And you can pose them how you like him and put him on your shelf. That's the point. If it can't do those things, and it just looks nice as far as how it was painted and how it was sculpted, then you don't really have your money's worth. You didn't get your money's worth. There was some area that it was lacking seriously. Now, with all these guys here, they're beautiful figures. All of them do the job of representing a certain style that is representative of the era that this figure came from. But there's still things that they all can't do that make them less than, the best representation of the figure. I mean, obviously some are better than others because given the time, some of these were the best that we had, namely the Soda ones. And they even couldn't do a lot of things that this Figuarts one can do, and it's a godsend. Now you see him kind of in comparison to, what we got beforehand. There's a lot of things that you see an evolution, and that's mainly the point of this portion of the review, is to show you there are things that were an evolution, and there were things that were, I want to say artistically, a regression. When you get to Street Fighter 4, you see a regression because now the sensibility that Guile was designed with is what they did for everybody, and that fucked it up. Everybody doesn't need to be exactly the same size. Then you come back here and it's like Figuarts made a choice to focus on the best versions of the character. Now, Dragon Punch. This is what it looks like in Street Fighter V, as it has looked in countless games. He can easily do that. There's no issues here. It's not hard to do. This is what it looked like even in animation. There it is again. The Senpu Kick. Very iconic. Everyone knows what it is. Very simple. But there are, figures that can't do it right. You know what I mean? Because they don't have proper ability to extend their legs. I mean, I've seen some images, once again, of the Storm Collectibles figure. And, even though he has a good range of motion, people weren't pulling this off right. I'm going to pull it off right for you so you can see. He can do it. The move is he's capable of pulling off the move, no problem. The fireball and stuff, that's one thing, but you got to be able to do at least some of them. Like this, that's not Zangief's move. This is the move. Look at the bend in his torso. I hope that maybe it's just the way they posed it and it's not so much, a limitation of the figure. As for the face, A lot of people were saying it doesn't look like Ryu, blah, blah, blah. Look at all these different versions. That's 5 on the side, and the other 2 are done by Namco. And those were tests. It looks like Ryu. You know what I mean? I don't know what they're talking about. They even got the detail on his gloves. It's dope. It's dope. So this Ryu is just ready to fight, and he just looks awesome doing it. You know, the lighting even hits his face right. You know what I mean? Like if you light him from the side, or double, compound lighting from one side and then below or above, you still get those pieces that you see in the Capcom artwork, the good Capcom artwork. Kind of like this, and he even looks more like this than what the in-game model looks like. And this is their own game. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of issues with Capcom's art department in today's games, and too many different artists. It's not consistent, and a lot of people don't seem to see that. But the artists at Bandai in the Figuarts realm, they see it, and they chose to focus on the best things. So I mean, you can't fault them for that. All right, let's look at the articulation. And remember, they are successfully pursuing character expression through humanoid action, which means this figure moves the way that a person does. So as you can see, this is him standing up straight from the side. The bandana is articulated, so you can actually move that around. It's pretty awesome, so you can get, falling, swaying to the side, etc. His shoulders on mine are pretty stiff, but you have plenty of articulation. The bottom portion of the gi, where the belt is rubbery kind of plastic, and it's movable. It's floating. His head, he can look up that much without using his neck. He can look down that much without using the neck joint, because you have a compound neck. But then when you push the neck down, you can look down that far. When you push it all the way up, you can look up this much as well. And you can straighten out the body so that you can see there's just the neck doing all the work. It's the way it should be. That's the way it usually is. He even got some side-to-side sassafras action going on. And he can do the front and back turkey neck shit. And he can, tilt a little bit. I mean, it's just whatever you need him to do to avoid getting punched or to react to a punch, or kick or whatever, he can do it. Shoulders, you have a ball-socketed shoulder in a butterfly, so it's like a compound shoulder joint. It's anatomically correct swivel up in the arm, so it's not a bicep swivel by traditional means, but you still get all the movement that you should. His arms bend and swivel. They bend more than 90 degrees. There's also a swivel at the elbow on top of the the past 90-degree bend that you get, which is pretty dope. You see that? So that's something that apparently since the Kinnikuman figures, or Ultimate Muscle for those of you in the US, or Muscles who have know those characters, they were doing that. They started it on those figures. So as you can see, well over 90 degrees, and that's the way it should be. This is a character who's going to be blocking punches from boxers that are twice his size, blocking kicks from kickboxers that are twice his size. And as you can see, they once did this before with the NECA figures, because they were the first Street Fighter figures to full-on utilize the compound, double-jointed elbow. Soda didn't have it at all. Some of the characters did, but they just didn't have it on Ken and Ryu, which to me was a missed opportunity, but it didn't stop me from enjoying the hell out of this alpha-styled figure. But you see, you started with the Soda, and it just got better as time went on. The High Dream one also had a double-jointed elbow, but it didn't give you as much range as we're seeing here. Now, it's a Figuarts. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you guys, man. I mean, at this point, you kind of know what you're getting into. But mine are kind of stiff. My joints on my shoulder are kind of stiff. But I like that. You can pop the shoulder up. You can put it down. You can rotate it. It even allows you to better move his arm in front of his chest to allow you to pull off the Hadoken, move. And it actually looks more natural. So now you can see the butterfly from behind. and now you see how the arms go together, really close. If you bend things, you can get it even more, because that's what I do when I'm doing the Hadouken pose. But you're seeing that, like, just about whatever pose, I'm gonna real quickly recreate a pose that you've seen from something, but just about whatever pose you want, you can pull off with him, because they gave him the properly engineered range of motion. It's not just giving him the joints, but does that look familiar at all? It should. But this is one of those things that, like, when you look at reviews of action figures, people will diss a figure because it doesn't have Marvel Legends articulation, and that's not the best articulation. It's points of articulation for the sake of points of articulation. Case in point, NECA has double jointed elbows and a butterfly joint, but yet he can't pull off that move because they didn't pick the right materials for the gi. So the gi is now fighting the articulation. Now, had the gi not been in the way, he would have better been able to pull that off. This is what I mean when I tell you guys that companies need to just engineer their figures. It's plain and simple. I've said it before, and I'm going to keep saying it. Just because the points are there doesn't mean that it's meaningful articulation. If you engineer your figure, you'll have the ability to do stuff. I apologize for the dead air, but I'm trying to pose him in, another better, different pose, so you guys can see more of what his articulation makes him capable of. A lot of people just seem to ignore this, but like I've told you before, Figuarts doesn't play when it comes to that stuff. Now, the gi on here is a little bit tough, but it allows him to actually utilize his abdominal articulation, because I want to say he's all ball joints. It's not a traditional ab crunch. The legs on this bad boy are masterful. I mean, you've seen them with the new SS bodies for the Kamen Riders, as well as since Bruce Lee. They have that compound, it's like an H joint with all this other stuff going on to help, close up the crotch. But you still get tons of range, out to the side, your lateral. You get tons of range in front, behind. I mean, it doesn't restrict at all. So, if you have a guy that can fight, he's going to be kicking in all angles. It's dope that you can actually do this. Now, I'm going to show you like a straight side, like a straight kick. You would usually be pushing, but, if he's just kicking somebody in the head from the side, like a roundhouse kick, there you go. Or just a straight side kick, there you go. Like from standing position out, there you go. And he's got the really good ankle pivot, so that you can actually get the sickle foot or whatever angle you want. You can chamber the kick, and it looks natural. I mean, he looks like freaking real life karatekas, and he doesn't look strange, That hip joint is just dope, and then the swivel is anatomically correct in his thigh. There's also a swivel down at the knee, which is pretty dope. I mean, you're not going to need it for much. And on top of that, you got a swivel at the ankle. You know what I mean? So you got so much articulation, and it actually works. It's not just articulation for the sake of articulation. You can even pull the toes back, So if he's going to stop a kick, he can pull that off. Or if he's climbing up a mountain, he's even got toe articulation. I mean, you can't complain about lack of articulation on this figure, If he was doing an outside crescent kick, he could easily, you could pull that off. His side kick, perfect. You know what I mean? Now, this is all the stuff that when people were reviewing some of the other figures, especially the Storm collectibles figure, you didn't get this kind of, all-encompassing detail showing off what it could do. You got a few kind of half-assed poses in a lot of the reviews, and a lot of people trying to tell you that it's just dope because it looks great. Look is only part of it. It's only half the battle, as us Joe fans know. So, now the Senpukek, Tatsumaki Senpukek, this is easy to do with this figure. You get the proper height because of the thigh, joints. And the lack of fight with the lower portion of his gi. It actually looks right. It's all I'm asking for, you know what I mean? He does some very specific things in the game. I want to be able to recreate that with my toy. It's not much to ask for. Now the Dragon Punch. Very simple. I did it with the wrong leg. Here's a fireball motion, the traditional fireball motion. I did it quickly so the palms aren't perfectly, aligned or not perfectly facing outward, but you can see that the extra joints allow for him to get meaningful articulation. Some of you in Taekwondo and Shotokan, you should recognize that. But overall, I mean, masterful articulation. I love it. It's great. All right, let's talk accessories. He doesn't come with that much in terms of accessories because Ryu doesn't really need that much. There are a ton of little things they could have done that they ended up with. I'll say with Storm Collectibles, they ended up making those things. They ended up making those things accessory pieces for their exclusive versions of the character. Like electric pieces and electric effect pieces and such. The different head for the bearded Ryu and whatnot. But these are essentially the ones you would need to do the stuff that you commonly see him do. He's got the two expressions, one when he's charging up the fireball, and then one when he lets the fireball out. The fireball itself with a stand, and the open palm hand so that he can, or splayed open hand so that he can actually do the fireball motion. And that's it. It's dope that they went simple, but they went logical. The effect parts all work together for the benefit of the whole. You can find the hole to put the peg in for the stand, and there you go. You got a fireball. Now the faces, like I said, gritting teeth, and then the open mouth. Now, the thing I see here is that these are expressions taken from the game. People have said stuff about his eyes being too far apart. You can only fit one eye in between, and that's the test. That's how you can tell if the eyes are spaced properly. If you can fit two, you got a problem. He looks good. Then you can compare him to the Storm. The Storm Collectibles figure, the thing I'll give them is they made his eyes a little bit more traditionally Asian. But like there's flesh going over his headband. That's not Ryu. Whereas the Figuarts, he's got the thick eyebrows going over the headband. So I mean there's checks and balances, and in the end, you buy what you like, but I'm not going to knock this. The head pops off real easily. In order to switch parts or faces, you simply take the top off, the top of his head off, the hair, and you pull off the back of the head, the bandana, and you'll see there's a little area for it to plug into. That's what gives it its articulation. And there's the huge peg that's holding the hair on. You just switch out the hair and the back of the bandana and make sure that you fit the head on correctly, which you can see from the different recesses where it goes. And all the heads are the same as far as that shape goes because you only have one top of the head, and that's how you get your different expressions. The hands are splayed open hands for a whole number of things, from shooting your fireball to moving dynamically to parrying to just looking at his outstretched hand, pondering his own power. It's real easy to replace. These pegs seem to be a little stronger than past pegs, or maybe the recess was carved out differently. But it's easy to take out, easy to swap hands. I have no issues. I'm not afraid that the peg is going to break, and I love that. That makes me feel like I made a good purchase. And like I said, the hand looks good in a number of situations. He could be parrying someone's attack, or right here, he's getting ready to do something, recoiling from an attack. It just looks real good. They also come with a double-paged insert that is the backdrop from Street Fighter V. And it looks really good. I found ways to light him and the backdrop so that it looked like still from the game. You still get some glare, even though it's a matte finish, but it's beautifully printed. It's kind of a nice, high-quality matte finish print. Like this here, it works really well, but I have my own way of doing this stuff where I can get like a clearer image, I put the scan lines to, harken back to the old days or to the filters of the re-releases of the older games. But as you can see, it's Ryu's stage in the background is nice and clear. And the same goes for his actual stage, you know, from Street Fighter V. This is the nighttime version of it. It's, you know, if you know your lighting and you know your tricks as far as distancing and everything like that, then you can pull this off with no problem, with, you know, focus and all that. But, you know, like I said, the hand works in many situations. Parrying, blocking, just moving around in general, you know, to imply movement. I like it. I like it a lot. I like the fact that, you know, they didn't go overboard. Ryu doesn't need that much because he's a simple character. He fights, and that's it. Everything he does has to be geared towards fighting, and I feel like this release did that in spades. And now for the bottom line. As you all know, it's always my favorite part. This figure, this line, this direction that Figuarts decided to go in with their versions of the Street Fighter figures, it's just a fucking knockout, in my opinion. It feels like they get what is missing from the franchise right now, and they're hearkening back to when that was not missing. When you look at these characters, you see the best, most recognizable versions. They're not all roided up. They're not all super exaggerated like from the alpha period. They're not, and not to say that that's bad. Some of my favorite artwork comes from the alpha period. But you feel like this is the most, this is Ryu, you know? That's Chun-Li. Despite what a lot of the haters have been saying, like you feel like this is what I've been looking at for the last 30 years of these characters existing. Not the bullshit that we got in the last 5. You know what I'm saying? So it's good to see someone take a stand and, you know, kind of ignore the bullshit. It's about time. You know, I wish more companies would do that. You pick an art style that best represents whatever your subject might be, and then you go with it. You know what I mean? You buckle down and you go with it. And here they did it, and it works perfectly. I mean, there's no way you can't tell who this character is. You know it's Ryu. If you've played Street Fighter for any amount of time, you know it's Ryu. He's not all swollen like the or swole as we used to say back in the day. He's not all, you know, looking like the Hulk. It's trying to, you know, fit into this karate gi. He looks like a buff human being who looks good when you see him next to other fighters and such. He looks like he came out of a fighting game. He feels like the character that you saw in the fighting game and in most of the related media. So, you know, I have no issues with this. I love it. I'm super happy with it. His range of motion is just beautiful. He even fits in scale-wise with your Soda figures. So for the characters that we probably won't get from Figuarts, you know, or it will be a really long time, at least we have the Soda. If you have the Soda figures, you can put them side by side, and it doesn't necessarily look bad. You still got a representation of the character from the series as he has looked for years, for more years than the last 2 or 3 iterations, you know? So I think they knocked this out of the park. This is a win. If you see it, you need to get it. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. As always, I am Strydent. You guys have been great. This has been my look at the SH Figuarts Street Fighter V, in quotation marks, Ryu. It's a beautiful figure. This is literally an S-class figure. It's definitely going to be up there on my best of 2017, and hopefully you guys have seen enough to make him a pick for you as well. And this review was not sponsored by Figuarts. I just love those figures. So anyway, peace outside. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give it a like, a share, let your friends know. Check me out on social media. All the links are in the description. And if you really want to help me out big time, jump on Patreon and support the channel. Every little bit helps, the smallest amount to the largest amount. And last but not least, check out my comic, War of the Gods. Issue 2 is on sale now on Indie Planet. And the links are in the description. It's some superhero fun. And as a smaller independent book, it needs all the views, all the eyes on it as possible. So check it out, show it to your friends. Every view helps greatly. And yeah, that's it for me. Thanks again.